super nice introduction. It's always good to be around good people, and ESP is one of the good, very, very good people in my good book. So I'm really excited today, and I am going to share with you a few things about things that I think are very important in language education, in particular in the field of TESOL, TESOL, ELT, and second language education. I'll be sharing with you 5 very often, 5 beliefs and practices that I think need a major rethought, if you like. I think we need to rethink, some of the beliefs and practices that have not been serving us very well, in the sense that these practices have been around for many years, and I think they're not doing any good to our students if we keep on doing these misguided beliefs and practices in language teaching, in language education. I will not be lecturing, but I will be having a conversation with you. So, throughout my presentations, I will be asking you some very simple questions for you to respond to. And hopefully you will be happy to turn on your microphone and share your thoughts with me throughout my session. Let me just show you again the image of my university. It's Nanyang Technological University. It's one of the good universities in Asia, together with some very good universities in Korea as well, like Sogang University. I think in Singapore, you will find that NTU is one of the good universities. And I'm affiliated with the School of Education within the university. I think it's called the National Institute of Education. It's a faculty of education, actually. And in Singapore, it's the Faculty of Education. The National Institute of Education is the #1 teacher education in Singapore. The reason being is the only one in Singapore. So if there's no competition whatsoever, and people who want to, build their career, join the teaching profession, for example, they have to study with us and spend 4 years doing their undergraduate degree in education. Okay, here is the takeaway from, of today's session. Yeah, I think we need to look at our beliefs and practices very carefully. Sorry, and throw away those that are no longer useful, especially those that impede language learning or language acquisition. And I'm going to share with you 5 beliefs and practices that have been with us for many years, and many people that I've seen in the region, in Asia, in Southeast Asia, they are still holding on to the beliefs, although these beliefs may not be serving our students very well anymore. Grammar, vocabulary, teaching materials, the text that we're using, and then the notion of strategies, that strategies are a shortcut to language learning, to language acquisition. And number 5 is native-like fluency, the idea that we have to spend a lot of time preparing our students to be able to speak like Zach Mooney, which is very interesting because Zach himself now is trying to speak like us, not like somebody from California, right, Zach? Because if you speak like people from California, a lot of people will not be able to understand you. Something that I'll share with you a bit later, yeah? Okay, so 5 points that I will be sharing with you. And there may be more. After my session, please ask questions, things that you find have been around for many years, and you feel that these ideas may not be useful anymore. Let me start at the first one. Grammar. I think the misconception that many teachers have in many parts of the world, in the ELT context, in the EFL context, in ESL context, is this: that whenever our students have or come into or encounter problems in their learning, when they can't speak very well, when they can't write very well, when they don't like your English lessons, when they don't do well on the examinations, the immediate response is, the grammar is so bad. I think we need to teach them more grammar. Have you heard about that? Yeah? Yeah, teach them more grammar. I don't think that's the way to go. Now, I'm not saying that grammar is not important. Grammar is important, but I think we need to understand that there are two types of grammar that we are dealing with when we are preparing our students, when we are, helping our students to develop their English language proficiency. The first one is what I would call the explicit grammar knowledge, the kind of grammar knowledge that we spend a lot of time, that teachers spend a lot of time teaching in the classroom. Yeah, the explanation can be very long and very detailed. Rules are provided. Practice exercises are given to the students, in such a way that at the end of it all, we expect our students to be able to make use of whatever we have explained in the classroom in such details for communication purposes. Yeah. I think that is something that we should, try to avoid as much as possible. If you have to teach grammar, don't spend too much time. Yeah, spend a small amount of time teaching explicit grammar, but don't bet your life on it. I think in many places you will find that a lot of teachers spend like an enormous amount of time teaching students all the grammatical rules in the English language. Yeah. So this is also known, in the generic terms, is a form focus, basically teaching. The goal of your teaching is to teach as much grammatical features of the language as possible to the students. What do people think about grammar? Now, this is something that I've seen being shared by a lot of people, including, a well-known grammarian, Michael Swan. I think he is a grammar person. He spent his whole life actually building his career, writing books on grammar. His advice, which I share, the same sentiment, is this: should we be teaching grammar? The answer is yes, we should. Do we need to teach all grammatical rules to the English to our students? The answer is no. It's a big no. Yeah. His advice, and I would go with that, is I think we have to consider teaching the most useful grammatical features to our students. Now, the question then is, what are some of the examples of useful grammatical features? Here are some. There may be a few more, yeah? Here are some examples of very useful grammatical features. Without, basic knowledge, understanding of these grammatical features, I think it will be very difficult for the students to comprehend the language and also to make use of the language for oral production or for written production. I hope that makes sense, yeah? There may be a few more here, but I'm just showing you some of the most important fundamental grammatical features that students need to learn. What about this one? Pauline, are you there with me? Yes, you're there with me, yeah. Now, what do you think about grammatical features like this one, which many teachers are very, very fond of teaching, spending one whole lesson teaching students, grammatical features like this, not only, but also. Had I met you earlier, I would have, little did I know that it's imperative that every teacher be, and things like this. Pauline, your thoughts?
Yes.
What do you think about these grammatical features? Do you think we need to spend a lot of time teaching these grammatical features to our students? It's not a trick question.
Yeah, it is necessary for learners to learn grammatical form and rules.
Yes, like this one, like the ones here.
Pardon?
Like the ones that you see on the screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, very good.
Okay.
Yeah.
They
Okay, very good.
kind of too complicated to me to teach.
Ari, are you here? Yes, you're here. What do you think about these grammatical features? Are these grammatical features considered useful, the kind of grammatical features that you see people using every day, that you use every day as well?
No, not at all. I mean,
Shaking
I
your
think
head.
that
I like that. Yeah.
if you are a writer, or if you are
Mm.
like a businessman or someone like that has to write in a certain way, these are useful, but for
Yes.
everyday people, everyday students, I
Yes,
don't think these are very useful. Makes it
that's
sound
right.
like old English kind of thing.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. And interestingly, the majority of our students are those students who are still struggling, trying to make use of whatever little English knowledge they have for authentic communications. And Ari is correct. If you are advanced, if you are good writers, if you want to show people that you have a good mastery of the English language, then this may be important, but not for our students who are still at the A1, A2 level, or even at the B1 level. Okay, my take on this is this. Should you be teaching this kind of grammatical features? My answer is yes, but do it very, very briefly. Don't spend hours and hours trying to explain this to your students. In other words, go easy on this. Teach them, but do it very quickly, just like that. Yeah. My belief is that once the students have reached a certain level of English language proficiency, like at the B1 and B2 level, I think these grammatical features will be acquired by the students quite incidentally, without the need for explicit and detailed and systematic teaching of all these grammatical features. I understand that in many places, these are the kind of grammatical features that are tested in the examinations. Yeah. If that is the main goal of your teaching, preparing your students for examinations, go ahead and teach all these grammatical features. But if your goal is to prepare students for the real world, and in the real world, people don't actually use this kind of grammatical features, especially in conversation, then stay away from this grammatical features. Yeah. So that would be my advice to you. The other type of grammar that is more useful for our students' English language proficiency development is the other type of grammar known as implicit grammar knowledge. Now, this implicit grammar knowledge is very much like the grammar that you have acquired when you speak Nilda, when you speak Spanish. You are using a lot of grammar there, but that grammar is, the kind of grammar that you acquired as part of growing up in Puerto Rico, for example. You know how to use these grammatical features in daily conversation, in writing, and things like that, but you may not be able to explain why you're using those grammatical features. Yeah, unless you are teaching Spanish, then you will have to learn how to provide explanations of these grammatical features to your students. Otherwise, for speaking purposes, for communicative purposes, you don't actually need to be able to explain. The more important thing is for you to be able to use these grammatical features when you speak Korean, Yunhee, for example, or when you speak Chinese, Ivy. I think you are using this implicit grammar knowledge. Yeah. So my advice again, between the two type of grammar, I would go for the second one. If you're looking for something more, specific, I would suggest about 20% for explicit grammar and 80% for the other one, for the implicit grammar. Yeah. Now here is a very good support for what I just shared with you. Now this quote comes from a book written by a second language acquisition specialist. The name is Sean Lowen. Now, please remember that this person, Sean Lowen, the author of this book, is not alone. It's not like that is his own idea. No, it's the idea of many, many people. It's the kind of idea that a lot of people, second language acquisition specialists, would also say the same thing. Your professor ESP would also say the same thing. I would say the same thing. Stephen Krashen will say the same thing. Rod Ellis will say the same thing. All the big guys will say the same thing. So it's very important for you to read this and remember this. This is the foundation for teaching language, for communication. And I'm going to read this for you, yeah? The ability to produce language relatively easily for communicative purposes draws heavily on implicit knowledge. heavily. That's the key word. Heavily means 80. Sometimes it can mean 90%. Yeah, there is some explicit conscious thoughts that may enter into your head, but for most, situational, for most communicative purposes, you have to draw on this implicit knowledge of the language. I hope that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, very good. Question for you is this. Just turn on your microphone if you have any thoughts. Yes, Ari.
In this weekend at Cotizo, I went to a speaking that was about how to teach grammar through games, through like games in class. And
Yes.
so the professor explained that he actually, at first, he would explain the norm, then he would do the game, then
Yes.
he changed it to do the game and explain the norm. None of those really work fine. He realized that when he didn't explain the norm at all, just did the game and let them figure it out, it worked much better. For example, he has this, and you have to look for the person who has that.
I like that.
Who has this, and it's
Yes.
for learning that the third person is has, not have.
Yes.
And sometimes the students will be like, he have, and he will like slightly correct them, like he has.
Yeah.
And the
Good
students
point.
will quickly like cut it up.
Yes, I think that is a great example of how implicit learning, implicit acquisition of the grammatical rules of the language might happen. So through games, when the students are not paying attention to the language, when the students are paying attention to how to play the game, basically, to the meaning that is being communicated through games, and that is how implicit language acquisition, flourishes. Excellent point. Any other thoughts? Anything else?
I think reading is an important section for teaching implicit grammar.
Yes, excellent point, Ruthing. And I would agree with that 100%. This, what you can see on the screen there. So reading, listening, viewing. If you spend time reading, viewing things that you enjoy, reading and listening that you understand, I think you will find that your implicit grammar will grow very, very quickly. So in the process of understanding a story, for example, in the process of understanding what is happening in Sesame Street, for example, incidentally, without you thinking about this, you'll be acquiring a lot of the grammar of the language. And that is what implicit grammar knowledge is all about. And that is the kind of knowledge that is useful for real language use outside the classroom. Yeah. If you're looking for something more, theoretical, academic discussion about implicit language learning, now this free ebook is for you. You can scan the QR code and you can read it. And after you finish reading, write a report and submit the report to Professor ESP for comments. So that's your homework.
You're giving me work.
Okay, so we are done with grammar. Yeah, I hope the message is very clear to you. Hopefully, remember, people everywhere, in many different places, in China, in Thailand, in Taiwan, in Korea, in Japan, and in many places, people, teachers continue to spend a lot of time teaching the students explicit grammar in a step-by-step manner. So one grammar at a time. And that is not the way to go. Yeah, that's not the way to go. But again, please remember, I have nothing against grammar. Some explicit teaching of grammar can be very, very useful. Yeah. Second one is this. The first one is grammar. I think we're done with that. The second one is vocabulary. The faulty belief that a lot of people still hold on to is that between grammar and vocabulary, I think people will say that grammar is more important. I think that is somehow mistaken. Yeah, my experience and the research that I've seen tells me very clearly that vocabulary is more important than grammar. And I'll explain to you why. But having said that, I have to say that both are important. If you are learning a language, a new language, you have to know the grammar and you have to know the vocabulary. But between the two, I think you should go for vocabulary. Unfortunately, that's not what's happening in the English language classroom in many parts of the world. Yeah, vocabulary is often neglected in favor of grammar teaching. And even when vocabulary is taught in the classroom, the teaching tends to be very superficial. Ari is thinking very hard. Is that correct, Ari? The teaching is very superficial. Yeah, teachers pay a lot of attention to the surface meaning of the words, of the new words that the students come across in the classroom. The focus usually is on the basic fundamental meaning. This word means this. Yeah, table, this is what a table. Give, that is what give means. Yes, Ari, you're saying something.
I was thinking about not my English classes, because I learn English more on my own by watching series. But what I lack in Korean, and what I lack in Korean is that, and my mom always tells me, do the same that you did with English, watch series and stuff, is that we quickly went through the vocabulary just to go back to like, okay, verbs, let's go back to verbs. And it's like, but I don't even know what we're talking about. What am I using the verb for? It's like, I don't know the vocabulary, and I still have big lacks of vocabulary in Korean.
Yes, I think yeah, one of your main jobs is to build your vocabulary. Initially, knowing 100 of the most commonly used Korean words will be very, very useful for you. And then you start building your vocabulary until eventually you have sufficient vocabulary size that will help you to be able to reach out to more people, discussing, things, various topics with other people. So what I'm saying here is that very often in the classroom, when you teach vocabulary, the focus usually is on the basic meaning, the dictionary meaning, if you like, the literal meaning of the words. What is lacking is the last one, lack of focus on the pragmatic meaning of the words. The pragmatic meaning of the words means how the word is actually used in real context, in real situations. And as you know, a word can have different meanings depending on the context for which the word is used. And that contextual meaning is, number one, is difficult to teach, is very often neglected, but I think you will later discuss how we can help our students to be immersed in different situations and different contexts where they can find how a word is used in a variety of contexts and how the meaning of that word changes quite a bit depending on who you're using the word to, in what context, in what situations, and things like that. But first, what does research tell us about vocabulary? Number one, there's a strong correlation between vocabulary and language skills. And language skills here refer to reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And what that means is this, that language ability, your ability to speak, your ability to understand, your ability to write, depends very much on how many words you have. And that, to me, is a very simple, direct relationship between the number of words that you know and your language proficiency, your language skills. I'm going to show you a very, very complex diagram. Do not be surprised. This is the result of a PhD thesis completed some years ago by a student, PhD students studying at the National Institute of Education, my university. The PhD thesis was subsequently published in a big journal, actually. This is a journal of language learning. It's a big journal. And the title is there at the top right-hand corner, Individual Differences in Second Language Learning, Examining the Role of Knowledge, Metacognitive Awareness, Memory, and Attention. This is a very interesting study. The researcher is interested in understanding the factors that influence students' comprehension, listening comprehension. Now, this is very, very common. the researcher had a lot of experience teaching Japanese students, especially lower proficiency Japanese students. And these students often have difficulty understanding people who speak to them in the English language. So his interest is really justified because this is the kind of problems that beginning students often have. They have difficulty understanding people talking to them. So what he wanted to find out in his PhD thesis is to understand what are some of the factors that influence listening. So he looked at mental cognitive factors like this one. Yeah, metacognitive awareness, attention control, whether or not their working memory has any influence on their listening ability to comprehend spoken language. Also looking at this too, whether topic familiarity has any influence on listening comprehension. Here is the result. How do you interpret this result? Nilda, have you taken research method class? What does the result what's the result telling you here? Any thoughts? Anyone, please go ahead and try to explain what the result is telling you. So very complicated there. There's a lot of numbers there. All these numbers are correlation numbers, yeah? Anyone? Yeon-hee?
I'm not sure I forgot what's underneath the results, but just looking at the numbers that are there, like 0.665 or something.
Yes.
So that memories are compared to attention control and other factors which were bigger, like cognitive strategies, memory was the highest.
So you're probably thinking that memory has a lot of important role to play in listening comprehension, right?
Yes.
That's not what it is.
Oh.
Okay, let me try to explain what this very complex relationship shows you. Point number one. Yeah, if you look at the small figures, the numbers there, I think that's the first thing for you to pay attention to. All these factors are related, are somehow related to students' ability to comprehend in the spoken language. That's point number one. Yeah. Point number two, some of the factors are indirectly related to listening comprehension, and some are directly related. Now, this is very tricky and very important distinction as well. Indirect relationship and direct relationship. Between the two, which one is more important, do you think? Which one is more crucial? Indirect or direct? Please say direct. That's the answer.
Direct.
Of course, direct, yeah. So there are only two variables that are directly, immediately, closely connected to listening comprehension. And those are topic familiarity, and the other one is vocabulary. Are you with me now? Yeah? Okay. Now, if you look at the relationship more carefully, topic familiarity is only a little related. The correlation is very small, like 0.27. Vocabulary, on the other hand, has the largest and most important and direct correlation with listening comprehension. So this table actually tells you very clearly that vocabulary is the most important predictor of students' ability to comprehend spoken language. So I hope the message is clear for you and for me that vocabulary is or continues to be an important factor for listening comprehension. Now, if we were to extend this, I know I have not presented anything about the relationship between vocabulary and reading, vocabulary and speaking, vocabulary and writing. Do you expect the results will be quite similar if we were to change listening to speaking, or listening to reading, listening to writing? Would you speculate that? I would actually. Yeah, I would speculate that vocabulary also explains a great deal of your ability, your students' ability in speaking, reading, and writing as well. Now, here are some responses that I heard from younger students, middle school students from China, whom I interviewed some years back. So I went to China actually and asked students about, their listening problems. What are some of the issues that they have when they're trying to listening to people like us speaking English to them? Well, both students basically say that vocabulary is a major issue for them. It makes sense because meaning, comprehension, understanding is captured by or represented by words. So as long as you know words, a lot of words, I think it becomes easier for you and for your students to understand, the information presented in the spoken text. The first quote there is very interesting. I have very small vocabulary. Teachers, I think you should feel guilty. Actually, I think for learning English, the grammatical rules seldom change. And yet my teachers keep on teaching me more grammatical rules. I think that's what he's trying to say. Yeah. Practical advice for all of us is this. Yeah. For daily conversation, I think 2,000 words is more than enough. 2,000 words in the English language is more than enough. Even slightly below 2,000 words is enough, like 1,500 or even 1,000 words is enough. For, basically you can say almost anything using this 1,000 of the most frequently used words in the English language. For speaking, yeah, for daily interaction, I think that's probably more than sufficient. But for reading and writing, I think you need to know a lot more words. Like usually the figure that is cited in the literature is usually about 5,000 words. What about 4,000 words? I think that's okay. But 2,000 will be too little. 1,000 will not be sufficient. So roughly about 5,000 words. Yeah. But this is just one side of the story. Number of words that your students need to know. The other side of the story, again, is a bit like the explicit and implicit grammatical knowledge. For vocabulary, we are looking at breadth, the number of words, but also depth. Depth here refers to how well you actually know the words. Have you seen the words being used in different situations, in different contexts, in different genres, for example, in speech, in writing, and things like that? And that to me is depth. One great example of vocabulary depth, I think, is to the extent your students are or have accumulated what has been called lexical chunks or lexical bundles. The idea is very simple. Words do not travel alone. Words travel together with other words. They have to do it just like that. Yeah, here are some examples. Yeah, make do with. These three words actually travel together. Make do with, make it up to you. Make fun of me, made my day, make up your mind. And there are other examples like this one. I'm going to show you some other examples here on the right-hand side. Ivy, can you see the words there? There you go. How about this, Ivy? Can you say make money?
Yeah,
You
I
can.
can say. I can
Okay.
say.
Okay. Do you make a lot of money back in China?
No.
Just kidding. Make money. So you can say make money. Yeah. Although
Yeah.
if you think about this expression, it sounds very funny. How do you make money? Doesn't make sense, yeah?
Yeah.
But the word make money travels together and they have a special meaning. That means you have an income, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What about this one, Ivy? Can you say make sure? Please say
I
yes.
can say make sure.
Very
It makes
good.
sense.
Yes, make sound. Can you say that?
Yeah, I can
Yes.
say
Make a fuss. Yes. Ivy?
yes.
Yes, please say yes.
Yes.
How about this one? Do you say make or do your homework?
Do your
tricky.
homework.
Do
your
why
homework.
not? Yeah, why not make your homework?
Why not make it seems like do
It's
your
strange,
homework.
isn't it? Yeah, you don't say that. So there's no explanation actually. You just have to do your homework.
Yeah.
Last one, Ivy. Make or do your bed?
Do your bed.
Do your bed or make your bed? Now Ivy is very confused now. I think people usually say make your bed, yeah?
Or make
your bed, but do your homework. Why? There's no reason for that. That's why it's called bundle. They occur together. Yeah, just like that. There's no reason, there's no explanation for that. Now here's the thing. Here's the thing. What is the big deal about lexical bundles or lexical chunks, or sometimes known as fixed expressions? Now here's the reason. Competent speakers, good speakers like you, like me, and most of your advanced level students, they have accumulated hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of these expressions in their head. And that's the reason they can speak very quickly and effortlessly without thinking, because they are making use of ready-made sentences, if you like. Ready-made sentences that are very useful, that they have seen being used in real context, in meaningful situations. So that would be my take on the issue of vocabulary depth. Again, depth refers to how well you know the words that you have learned. It's not enough to know this word means this. That's just not enough. That is just the tip of the iceberg. Now, how would you help increase your students' vocabulary depth and breadth? How do you do that? Think about it. Yeah, we'll come back to this question a bit later. Again, the question to us is always, yes, vocabulary is good, but how do we go about teaching vocabulary to our students? So that if they have to know only 2,000 words, how can we help them to really, really master this 2,000 words so that they can use this 2,000 words for a wider variety of academic, social, and also communicative purposes? Okay. One question that I have for you, Ying, is it worth teaching idiomatic chunks, idiomatic expressions, like no need to cry over spilled, penny wise but pound something, it's water under something? Yeah, on the right-hand side, the image there say break a leg. Do you need to teach all these idiomatic expressions to our students?
Not necessary for communicative competence.
Okay. Any other thoughts, please? So Ying says not necessary. But people in China are very fond of using idiomatic expressions. Any other thoughts? Yes? Waiting for your responses.
I mean, it's not necessary, it's not mandatory, but it's very useful, and it will make you sound more natural and you will understand people better. So like to be necessary, maybe not.
Yes, Ari, when you say you understand people better, who are you referring to when you say people?
Other English speakers, not only native, but for example, many of these have similar in Spanish.
Yes, what's the problem is that many non-native English speakers don't use this, or they don't understand what this means. So that's a problem, yeah. So this is a point that I will refer to a bit later when they talk about native-like fluency later on. My rule of thumb is this. Yeah, no need to cry over spilled if you know how to fill this in, if your students know how to fill this in, then that expression is useful. Penny wise, but pound. Can you complete this sentence? Pound? No, Nilda is shaking her head. So this one is not useful. Not useful for you, not useful for your students. Yeah. It's pound foolish. It's very, very culturally loaded. Only people in the UK understands this. In other places, this expression is not used. It's water under
The bridge.
under the bridge, yes. Well, again, it depends on whether this is something that students encounter on a daily basis. What about break a leg? So before your big exam, somebody might say to you things like, hey, Ari, break a leg. I don't like this, actually. Break a leg means good luck.
I have heard that one. That one is the same in Spanish. It's exactly the same.
Okay. So
I know that one.
Okay, if it has the same equivalent in your own language, then that's okay. I don't think you say this in Chinese. Ying Ying, do you say this in Chinese? No, you say things like jia yu.
Yeah, good luck.
Yes. Rashmi, break a leg. Please
Yeah,
don't.
no,
don't break your
we
leg.
don't say that.
Okay, so the point again, competent speakers have acquired thousands and thousands of lexical bundles. And those are the kind of things that will enable people, you, me, and everyone to be able to produce language quickly, spontaneously, effortlessly. Yeah. So that is the purpose of acquiring a lot of lexical bundles in the English language. Next one. So the first one is about grammar. The second one is about vocabulary. The next one is about text. Text here refers to any kind of teaching materials that you're using in your teaching. It can be printed materials like course books. It can be text from the internet, multimodal text, for example. It can be video, YouTube materials, or any kind of materials that they're using in the classroom. Yeah. Again, this seems like a very obvious statement, but I think a lot of teachers are forgetting about the importance of text, that the content will have to be very, very, very interesting. Not just interesting for you. That's not very important that the text is interesting to you. It has to be interesting for your students. If the text is not interesting, if the text is not appealing, not much can happen in your class, actually. Some people have suggested, in fact, that your teaching materials will have to be emotionally appealing. It has to appeal to their emotions. Yeah, they read something, they feel happy. They read something, they cry, for example. That is a very, very powerful kind of teaching materials. The reason is very simple. If something is emotionally appealing, students are likely to remember what they have just learned. And the students are more likely to be more fully engaged during the lesson that you have with them. Yeah, emotional engagement becomes so important. So it has to be interesting in that sense. Next, when you talk about materials, you have to pay attention. You have to consider the difficulty level of the materials, the linguistic dimensions of the materials. I think generally we are looking at three types. Number one is the kind of materials that are at the student's level. Yeah, that means students can read with understanding without any help from you. Comfort zone, basically. The second one is stretch zone. The kind of materials that are useful for the students, but the students may need help from you, may need help from resources that are available in the library or on the internet, on Google and things like that. The third one is the kind of materials that you should never use. Materials that are at the student's panic zone. They look at the text and then they freak out, basically. So number three is out, yeah? So we are looking at between number one and number two, basically. Which one would you go for? Which one would you go for? Comfort zone or stretch zone? Anyone?
Comfort?
Yes, Yunhee?
Maybe comfort?
Comfort zone, I like that. Yes, please say that again 3 times. Yunhee?
Comfort
Yes,
Comfort
comfort zone. Yes, I like that. Yes. Okay, let me just help Yun here with some explanation why comfort zone materials are extremely useful. Yeah. But first off, let's talk about stress zone. Stress zone is the kind of materials that you are maybe during your undergraduate years, your lecturers tell you that the materials will have to be slightly above the student's head so that you can introduce something new to your students. Yeah, maybe new vocabulary, maybe new grammar, and maybe some new contents as well. Nothing wrong with this. Yeah, nothing wrong with this. But the misguided belief that many teachers have is this, that easy, familiar texts serve no educational purpose. I think that is misguided. So I would agree with Yun Hee when she says that comfort zone materials, easy, familiar text, extremely useful for language acquisition, for language development. Reasons, I think you have heard from your professor, ESP. She must have spent time explaining to you why easy materials are very, very useful for language development. Number one, theoretically, I think language acquisition develops when the students are exposed, immersed in comprehensible language. Yeah, that's a major prerequisite requirement for language learning to happen. Number two, easy materials are a great source of implicit grammar. Let me say that again very carefully so that you can appreciate this. If the text is difficult, there's no way you can learn anything from the text. If students will not be able to acquire any meaningful language features. Yeah. Implicit grammar will just, run away from your students. Number three, it's easy language is a source of deeper vocabulary knowledge. Because when you see easy text, and when the students encounter words used in different situations, in different contexts, but always in a language that they can understand, I think they will acquire a lot of the vocabulary depth. Knowledge of the vocabulary increases a great deal. And number four, this is something that we don't appreciate very much. Students need to see the words again. Students need to see the grammatical structures again. The technical word for that is consolidation. They need affirmation. They need confirmation. Hey, I saw this word yesterday. Now I'm seeing the words again. Hey, I saw this grammatical structure in my earlier book. I'm seeing this again. So what they have learned becomes reinforced and strengthened. And that is what consolidation is all about. And that is what restructuring is all about. Restructuring refers to the fact that students may have picked up something that is not entirely correct. But when they see a lot more, positive instances of how language is used, vocabulary is used in different contexts, they are able to sort of restructure, reorganize what they have previously learned in other situations. Yeah. So again, the misconception is that easy language has no place in language learning, that we have to always introduce something new in our teaching materials. I have nothing against that. Teaching students something new is always a good thing, yeah? But remember that the students need to see how the words are recycled, how the words, the language are used in different situations. Again, question for you is this: can you increase the amount of easy and interesting text in your teaching? Please say yes. The next question is, yes, where do you find easy listening and reading materials? Yun Hee.
maybe around them.
Around them, yes.
Yes. Like,
Anything else? How about this one, Google? Or any AI-powered tools will give you a lot of, examples and access to easy and interesting materials. If you use ChatGPT, Copilot, or maybe Meta AI, you can give the prompts like, please create a very easy story for my students who are at the A2 level, and the topic will have to be something like this. The materials will appear right before you. Or if you have a library of graded reading materials, I think that is another place for you students to go to. Easy and interesting materials. Now, here are just some examples of websites that provide free access to easy reading materials. Hundreds and hundreds of these materials available on the internet. So yes, 20 years ago, you can say that it was difficult to find materials. But today, it's just at the tip, of your fingertip, actually. It's so easy to find all these materials. All these materials are free, completely free. Yeah, you can read it online. You can download it for classroom use. And there's no question about copyright or anything. It's freely available. Now, this one, on the other hand, is not free. This one is a very good library, online library, digital library. It has more than 2,000 actually graded reading materials. Graded means students can always find reading materials that are at their level. They've been graded according to maybe easy materials, A1, A2, maybe intermediate level, B1, B2, A1, C1, C2, and things like that. The students can read, the students can listen, then the students can do both actually on the screen. The only thing is that it's not free. You have to pay a little. Yeah. Okay, first one again is grammar. Yeah, some misconception about grammar. There's some misconception about vocabulary, and some misconception about teaching materials. That our teaching materials will always have to contain something new. It doesn't have to be like that. The students need a lot of opportunities to see again, to learn again, to to consolidate whatever knowledge that they have acquired in the previous week or in the previous month. Number 4, my favorite, is learning strategies. A quick question to you. Can you turn on the microphone and answer my question together? Learning strategies are very, very useful for our students. Your answer should be yes or no.
Yes.
Say it together.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting. Everyone says yes, except Nilda. Nilda is shaking her head. Nilda, please tell us.
I also said no.
You
Based
also
on the
said no.
text-
Yes, okay.
Yeah, just based on the text that we read, they're not really that important because I remember how it said that it's like correlational.
Yes. Yes. So Nilda is the only person, maybe, and Ari also. We'll explore this topic together, yeah? Strategies. But first, I'll have to say that learning strategies can be useful. But the question is for whom? At what stage of learning, yeah? Let me just give you an example, a quick example. A strategy known as guessing the meaning of difficult words from context, for example. Is that useful or not useful?
Useful?
Useful or not useful? It's a tricky
depends.
question.
Level of the students, maybe.
It's a trick question. The answer to
Maybe
that is that it can be useful, but for the majority of beginning students, guessing words, the meaning of new words from context, are not the most useful strategy, because chances are, 50% of the time they guess it wrong. Yeah, compared, for example, with the teachers. The teachers or you, maybe you encounter a new word that you don't understand, and then you try to guess the meaning of the words. Your chance of getting it correct is more like 80% or 90%. But your students, maybe only 20% or 30%. Again, the basis for me saying this is that because your students know only 500 words or maybe less, and they can't make use of that 500 words to make sense of, to guess the meaning of the words. On the other hand, you know maybe about 5,000 words. And your vast knowledge base allows you to make informed, intelligent guesses, but your students are not in that position yet. Yeah, let me just explain a bit more. The faulty belief is this, that strategy is a magic bullet is a shortcut. If you just learn like 5 of the most powerful strategies, I think you don't have to spend a lot of time learning English. I think that is mistaken and that is misguided. Let me share with you some of the reasons. Yeah, if you started reading the literature on strategies, you will find that the strategy researchers will say things like this as a basis for them exploring, advocating the use of strategies in English language teaching. Number one, this is what they have found from research. Good language learners, those who are able to develop, a very high proficiency in the language, they reported using a lot of strategies. Okay, number two, on the other hand, students who are not so good or poor language learners, they don't use strategies. Point number three, when these researchers did some fancy thing with statistics, looking at Pearson correlation, regression analysis, and things like that, they found that, hey, look, there's a positive correlation. Isn't that wonderful? Between strategy use and proficiency. Yeah, with those students who are at the higher level of proficiency using more strategies. So, conclusion, I think we should teach our students strategies. And that is the suggestion that they often make in the literature. This is one example. This is one example. Nilda, because you said that you do not like strategies, please read this. I'm with you, yeah? Nilda, read it out loud for everyone.
Strategies are the L2 learner's toolkit for active, conscious, purposeful, and attentive learning, and they pave the way toward greater proficiency, learner autonomy, and self-regulation.
Yes. Well, Nilda reads really, really very well. I like hearing your reading just now. So what does it mean, Nilda? What is the author trying to say here? So if you were to translate what the author is saying here, what would that be?
I'm trying to read it again.
That is the problem when you're reading aloud, you can't pay attention to the meaning of the words.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's a way to deepen the learning. Like just to take it further because it's saying about like learner autonomy.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else, please?
Think that it says if you have good learning strategies, it can lead you to greater proficiency.
That's what it is saying. Yes, it solves all your problems, because when we teach our students, beginning level students, their language is not wonderful yet, but just teach them strategies. It will solve all of their problems. They'll become more autonomous. Yeah, they'll become, their learning becomes more purposeful. They'll become more attentive, more engaged in language learning. And all this will lead eventually to greater English language proficiency. Is that really happening? I don't think so. Yeah, let me share with you a piece of study. I'm not saying that this study is representative of the role of strategies, but it gives you an example of how strategies may not always be useful for your students. Now, this is a study that was published in 2018. Yeah, the title again is Metacognitive Pedagogical Sequence. Basically, that's a strategy. Yeah, metacognitively based listening strategies. Is it listening? Yes, listening strategies. And the researchers is interested in understanding the impact of strategies on improving students' English language listening comprehension. So the participants of the study was 64 undergraduate students. Non-EL means non-English language majors. Their level is not high, I think in the A2 range. I think this is happening a lot in many places in Asia. China, you'll find the same thing. In Japan, that is also the same thing, that the majority of non-English language major students, they are still at the lower end of the proficiency level. So just like in in an experimental study, there are two groups here. The first group receives listening lesson plus strategies. Now, this strategies basically involves asking students to, before you listen, please plan carefully. Please, think about the title and think about what the listening materials are going to be like. All these kind of things. After listening, the teachers may ask the students to please reflect back on what you have just listened. Please, what else can you do in the future to improve on your listening comprehension? That sort of things, thinking strategies, yeah? The other group, on the other hand, is just doing listening only, the usual listening lesson. The result, any thoughts? Same? Different? Please turn on your microphone, please.
Different.
Different in favor of?
Like the group one will have like a better score.
The group one will have a better score. Who said that just now?
Me.
Oh, Yunhee. Okay, what is the basis for you saying that?
Because even though they had the same listening lessons, because of the strategies they had.
Okay. Now here are the results. The first one is in Chinese language. Zhang Ji, can you say that, the first one?
一样的
And that means?
means the same.
Yes, it's the same. The performance is the same. The other one is in Thai language, which basically reads the results are the same. There's no difference between the two groups. Interesting, isn't it? Maybe you're thinking, well, that is something that happens in Thailand. Let me take you to another place. Yeah, Yunhee, please stay with me. Stay tuned, Yunhee.
Yes.
Now this one is, again, metacognitive strategy awareness intervention. Now the participants now are graduate students from undergraduate students from Japan. Here you go. Yeah. If you're interested, I hope you're interested, and maybe you can replicate the study for yourself so that you can see the impact of strategy training on students' proficiency development. The profile of the students are quite the same, actually. EFL college students in Japan, non-English major. Their level is fairly low, like A2 on CFR. Now, in the previous study, we had two groups, yeah? Now, this one, you have three groups. Now, if you're doing a master's thesis, I think 3 groups is better than 2 groups. So group number 1, strategy plus some listening. So the teacher provided the students with a number of listening materials for them to enjoy and to listen to. Group 2, strategies plus the usual listening lesson. Are you with me, Yunhee? Yeah?
Yes.
And group 3 is the control group. They don't receive any kind of intervention. They're just following the regular lessons. Result, Yunhee? Group 1 is better, yeah?
I think like since they are they are students with low proficiency level.
Yes, yeah, correct. Yeah, A2 is pretty low.
Yes, then maybe the same, like the previous study.
Exactly, yes, exactly. Look at this result. Yeah. First result, very interesting. The experimental groups, the first 2 groups, they were very happy with the treatment. Wow, I like the way the teachers taught us. I think I learned a great deal. And they became more confident actually in their listening ability. But that is a false confidence. If you look at their actual listening, the post-test results of their listening comprehension, this is what you get. Yeah. Yeah. Pre-test and post-test. Group 1 and group 2, the experimental group. Yunhee, what do you see on the graph? Their performance goes up or drops?
Drops.
Yes, their performance drops actually. Interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
And the control group?
Control groups, a little increase.
Yes, they increase a little bit. Okay, your explanation. Now, this is where your knowledge about SLA actually becomes very important. And I'm sure Professor ESP has been spending a lot of time explaining to you the importance of SLA. Reason for this? What about explanation? Anyone?
I don't know if it is correct.
Yes.
But maybe similar to what happened with Nilda before, that when she was reading, she wasn't really comprehending what was being read. They were too focused on how to get the best scores, not learning the words. So they were just like, okay, I have to pick up these words so that I can answer the questions correctly. Know what this word means.
Nice try. Yes. Anyone else, please? Anyone else? Ying, you want to try?
Maybe it's because children might be misled by the strategy they may come out of it.
Students are being misled. I think that is a possible explanation. Now, what happens was that when you are still at the low level of English language proficiency, when you listen to something, you are so busy trying to figure out what the words mean, actually. You are worried that you may miss a word here and there. And because of that, you don't have time to actually do the other things like thinking, planning, evaluating, all these wonderful things. You know, they just disappear from your head. And in fact, these are interfering with your, with your language processing. For a simple explanation, now this sentence will provide a simpler explanation. You can't do two things at the same time. Are you with me on that? You can't do two things at the same time unless you are very good at doing those two things. Now, in the case of our students, they're still struggling with English. On top of that, you're giving them something to worry about. Hey, think about the strategies that I've just taught you. You better make use of these strategies. They can't. You can't do two things at the same time. Yeah.
Do you think that they used a listening sample that was maybe too difficult for their level? And
that's a possibility.
If they had used an easier listening sample, maybe the results may be different.
It could be, but look, Unsung, the control group, on the other hand, is okay. I mean, they're doing okay. They made some improvement, not wonderful, but they made some improvement. Well, actually, the purpose of the study is to see the positive impact of strategies, but the researchers did not find it. And that's very interesting. So instead, strategy seems to be, quite harmful, if you like, because it has a bad impact on the students' listening comprehension. Well, I think this is where you need to be very careful when you read the literature, when you read an empirical research study, and when the researchers provide, a theoretical explanation. I think you need to be very careful in interpreting. Correlation, for example, is not causation. Correlation is just a correlation. It doesn't tell you which way it is going. So the question of, do more strategies lead to higher proficiency? That's a tricky question. Yeah, one possibility might take, for example, is that it is the other way around. It's higher proficiency. When you have reached a higher level of proficiency, then you are able to make use of a lot of strategies. What strategies? Where do these strategies come from? I think these strategies come from your experience learning your first language. Yeah, you can begin to transfer, those things that you have subconsciously learned when you pick up your first language. So brief strategy training is okay. Again, I need to be very careful here because I don't want to go against completely with all those strategy researchers who have spent like 30 years researching this topic. So the key thing again is a small amount of time is okay, but don't bet your life on it. It's not a shortcut. It's not magical. I would go for this advice by Daniel Willingham. He is a real scientist, if you like. He's a cognitive scientist, somebody who tries to understand how our thinking and how our mind works. His advice is this: teaching strategies, whether it's reading strategies or speaking strategies or listening strategies, is a low-cost way to give developing readers a boost, but it should be a small part of your job. Do not replace your job with simply, teaching students a set of strategies. So what can you do? Interesting, isn't it? His advice is build your students' vocabulary and build their background knowledge, increase their knowledge base. Now, these are two things that are most important in language learning, in reading, in listening, and in other areas of language learning. Ladies and gentlemen, the last one, native-like fluency. Again, a lot of teachers, despite the fact that this topic has been, discussed in the professional literatures for the past 30, 40 years, a lot of teachers still believe that native speaker accent is the gold standard, is the most important goal for English language teaching in, many countries in the world. But if you look at the image there, which is very interesting, native speakers are taking global English lessons. Native speakers of English are learning how to speak in a way that people like us can understand. Isn't that interesting? So they have to relearn their English. They can't use all these wonderful, difficult to understand idioms, for example, when they speak to people from Korea, when they speak to people from Japan and from other places. In particular, this is important for business people. Now, those people who are having big, important meetings, making important decisions that will cost them millions and millions of dollars, they have to make sure that when they speak, their business counterparts can understand. Yeah. So with that in mind, let me share my thoughts with you. Point number one is that speaking like a native speaker from the US, from the UK, is not desirable. You don't want to change your identity as a person coming from Puerto Rico, for example, as somebody coming from Korea. You want to speak with your Korean accent. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I speak with my Singapore accent. I speak with some Indonesian accent, maybe because I come from Indonesia and I spent time teaching, working in Singapore. And number two, from an SLA perspective, from a second language acquisition perspective, it's not possible. It's not achievable. It doesn't matter how much time you spend. If you are learning English in Korea, for example, your English will be accented, if you like. Yeah, like many other people in Korea. And there's nothing wrong with that. And number two, English is now a global language. So chances are very high that when you speak, you'll be speaking with people from, people like Ari, for example, people like Pauline, people like Ying Ying, people like, Ying Ruo Hu, for example, or Miao Jie, and things like that. Yeah. And next, we are now looking at new standards. It's no longer, so native speaking, native accent, native-like accent is no longer the only standard today. Probably it's not. It should not be the only standard. Yeah, the new standards today says that when you speak, I think it's important for you to be comprehensible, that other people understand what you are trying to say to them. Number two, it has to be socially and culturally acceptable. I think that is another important dimension. Language is culturally and socially situated. So if I speak to somebody from Thailand, I need to make sure that I'm using their norms when I communicate with them. Otherwise, they will feel, slighted, offended, and things like that. And the last point is also very important. It's good to be multilingually competent. You're competent in English, you're competent in Spanish. Nilda, you're competent in Russian as well? Is that what you said earlier on? No. So
English and Spanish.
English and Spanish, yeah. Please add Korean very soon. If you spend,
Yeah.
if you spend in Korea, if you stay in Korea 1 whole year, then you will be picking up a lot of Korean as well. So today, the same standards are being applied to you, to me, to native speakers, to non-native speakers as well. Number one, yeah, if you are speaking English, you have to be locally competent. Locally means people around you will have to understand you so that you have no issue communicating with them. You have to be regionally, because in Asia, we are talking about regions, yeah, different regions of Asia. Yeah. And also the last one is internationally competent, whether or not when you communicate with other people in speaking or in writing, people from across different parts of the world, they can follow, they can understand, they can appreciate what you're trying to say to them. The same is applied to Zach. The same standard is applied to Yunhee. The same standard is applied to me. Yeah. So this is what democracy is all about today. So the question from a pedagogical perspective, the question of whether which one is better, a native speaker or a non-native speaker when it comes to teaching English is no longer relevant. I don't think this is a relevant question today, although I know that parents prefer that their kids be taught by native speakers of English. Yeah, but as an enlightened English language teachers, I think we need to be aware of this. Yeah, the question today is whether or not you are a good teacher, whether you are an effective teacher. It doesn't matter where you come from. Yeah. So the question to you again is this: are you an effective English language teacher? On a scale of 1 to 10, please give yourself a number. Turn on your microphone and say it together. If you have a 5, then you have some way to go. Say it together, please. 3, 2, 1. Say it together. Turn on your microphone. Are you an effective language teacher on a scale of 1 to 10?
10.
10, very good. I think that is a question that we need to be, asking continually. Yeah. What are the characteristics of effective English language teachers? Now, again, here is my way of promoting my writing. Feel free to download this. I shared my thoughts about what a good language teacher should, possess these days. Yeah. Yeah, the slides are available. I think Professor ASP has already put it on the university website. Again, these are some of the 5 that I've shared with you. Number 1 is grammar. Remember 2 types of grammar, Nilda? First one is explicit, the other one is implicit. Yeah, we should go for the implicit one. Try the best you can to empower your students, helping them to acquire more of the implicit type of grammar, not the explicit. Explicit, 20%, not more than that. Yeah, but if you are preparing your students for the big examinations that has a lot of grammatical features, then flip. You have no choice but to teach them more of the explicit grammar. Vocabulary is more important than grammar. I think you have to spend more time teaching vocabulary. But pay attention, there's a size, breadth, and there is depth as well. Yeah, the depth I think is more important, if you ask me, than the breadth. I think people have been saying that with 1,000 words, you can say almost anything in the English language. Let me say that again very carefully. With just 1,000 words, you can say almost anything. You can even publish an award-winning novel. Let me cite an example of that. Has anyone of you read The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway? Have you heard about that? Mm-hmm. You're nodding your head, Yunhee? Yeah. Read it again. And then do some simple analysis, trying to find out how many words he used in that story. The majority of the words in that story come from the first 1,000 of the most frequently used words in the English language. It's really, really amazing how he made use of simple words and put them together in different combinations to come up with such a beautiful story. Number 3, text the teaching materials. Number 1, it has to be interesting. Anything that is not interesting will be filtered out by your students. So think about materials that are very interesting. And number 2, comfort zone materials, according to Yun Hee, for example, is extremely important to help your students to consolidate what they have learned in the previous months or previous weeks. Number 4, strategies are not magic bullet. So don't spend too much time on this. Yeah, you can teach them very briefly, but that's about all, 5% maybe. And finally, native-like fluency is no longer a gold standard. I think the standard today is comprehensibility and acceptability. 2 things, comprehensibility and acceptability. The first one is a linguistic consideration, whether or not people understand you. Number 2 is a social dimension, acceptability. Different professions require different level of English language proficiency. Acceptability is higher for English teachers. Acceptability is not so high for people working as a shop assistant in a tourist area, for example. Yeah, you can say with broken, you can help the customers with broken English, bad grammar, bad vocabulary. That is not really that important as long as the customers understand you. But in terms of acceptability, it's not very high. But as a teacher, I think you need both linguistically acceptable, linguistically, and also acceptability will have to be highly acceptable. Again, some free gift for you today. All these are available on my slides. You can scan and maybe download. Here are some. This is my last slide. I'm not going to discuss this unless you have questions that you want to discuss together with me. These are some potentially misguided beliefs and practices. I think we need to be very careful. Number 1, technology is a silver bullet for second language learning. I think that is a big question mark, yeah? Number 2, we should all embrace translanguaging pedagogy. I don't know, ESP, are you a big fan of translanguaging?
I am actually writing a paper on this.
Okay.
Yeah. Are you? Because
no, I'm not.
I mean, I like the idea if I'm teaching in the US. And
yes.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
Yes.
and there's bilingual population, students who speak Spanish and English.
Yes.
Definitely, this is very helpful. I'm not sure how it can be applied in Korea.
Yeah. So yes, exactly my sentiment. So we need to be very careful when people come up with a new big idea about translanguaging and everyone starts doing it. You need to be very careful. Translanguaging is applicable in certain contexts, especially in EMI, English as a medium instruction context, in places where teachers actually teach content using English. Not for our students who are developing their English language proficiency at the A1 and A2 level. I don't think translanguaging is likely to be useful. Multimodal literacies. Well, these are things that I am still thinking about. I am wondering if these are actually useful for EFL, ESL teaching contexts in Korea, in China, and in some other places. I'm happy now to respond to any questions, any thoughts, any views that you might have about English language teaching. Any questions, both related to the topics that I've been sharing with you or anything else that you feel is worth discussing. Feel free.
I have a question from the article that we read beforehand.
Yes.
I have it here.
Yeah.
About the pragmatic instruction for English. So in the article, you said that we should teach pragmatics, right? But in the last paragraph, you make this kind of distinction that, so basically we should teach pragmatics so that students can evaluate their interactional consequences of their pragmatic choices rather than insisting on native speaker norms. But are pragmatics not just native speaker norms? Like a lot of one of the examples that you used about like ordering coffee, being like, oh, give me this, give me a coffee. I think and it's like in the US you shouldn't do that. I think it's different even in England where that is fine. So how are those different?
Okay. Yeah, the word pragmatics should be understood as teaching language in context, in social context. Now, in the past, the social context refers to native English-speaking context only. But today, I think it should be international pragmatics. Yeah, the kind of language that is appropriate, socially acceptable in different places. In Japan, maybe in Korea, maybe in Singapore,
So there's
and
a
in some
different
other
one
places.
for each.
Yes, different one for each. Yeah,
I see.
And that makes it really interesting, but at the same time, it's very challenging. It used to be very easy in the sense that, okay, here is one standard for everyone. Yeah, the US culture, for example, the US pragmatics, for example, very straightforward. But now it's potentially students will encounter, different cultures the moment they step out of the classroom. In Singapore, for example, Singapore being a metropolitan international country, for example, you can see almost everyone from different places in the world. I think you need to understand that people's use different set of values. They have different set of values, different set of ways of doing things. So yeah, so experience is very important. My advice to students is ask your parents for some money so that you can travel around the world and get to know people from different cultures. It's not a bad thing, actually. It's something that is very useful. Rashmi, yes. Rashmi is my graduate student. I think she has just completed her second semester, and that is her last semester. And she is graduating maybe in July or August.
Yay.
Rashmi is from Singapore.
Yay.
Oh.
Yes. Guys, come to Singapore. It's lovely here.
It's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Any other questions?
Dr. Willie, I have a question.
Yes, Pauline.
I agree with you that teachers spend too much time on grammar in a lesson, but actually I agree with that explicit grammar is necessary in a class. And one of my students, he lived in Vietnam and he learned English implicitly. And after coming back to Korea, he doesn't have any problem with English. Now he's studying in international junior high school. And he asked me that he needs grammar explicitly because enter or test English test in Korea, he realized that he has lack of explicit grammar. So
I understand. I think that is a point that I tried to stress earlier on. In exam situations, I think explicit knowledge of the grammar can be very useful because of the nature of the exam. Exam questions often require that the students think linguistically or meta-linguistically, like in terms of subject of agreement, in terms of tenses, in terms of how clauses are constructed and things like that. So in your case, in that situation, I think teaching the students some, or maybe rather intensive explicit knowledge of the grammar can be useful. But Pauline, your students has already acquired sufficient knowledge of the language. He or she can already speak the language. So this is where explicit teaching of the grammar can be useful. If you look at Singapore, for example, I would not be surprised. In fact, I would support the teaching of explicit grammar to the students The reason being the students are already very fluent. They are very fluent because, starting from kindergarten or even before they start school, they already speak the language. They understand the language. Yeah. That's the kind of language that they acquire at home and in the environment. But in school require that the students learn academic language. And academic language, yes, academic language is characterized by the use of very careful grammar, basically. So school grammar, I think they have to learn how to express themselves in writing in particular, using, the acceptable grammatical standard.
Yeah, actually his problem is in reading because of lack of grammar. So that's the problem.
Yeah. So in the bigger scheme of things, I think the first thing we need to do is to, help the students acquire this implicit knowledge of the grammar, developing vocabulary depth. Let them play, let them use the language first, and then after that, gradually you start to introduce the explicit grammar. It's not the other way around. I think what we've been doing in a typical high school or secondary school is that we teach the grammar first so that the students can use the grammar. I think we got it reversed. Yeah, you have to have a sense of how the language works first. You have to understand how language is used first. And then slowly and gradually, you encourage your students to pay attention, to notice the features, the grammatical features that are present in the text. And that is exactly what Singapore teachers are doing in primary schools, starting from grade 1, 2, 3, and 4. The students do a lot of listening in the classroom, with the teachers doing a lot of reading of interesting stories on a daily basis. But from time to time, at strategic points, the teachers will highlight, the students will try to draw the students' attention to certain grammatical features that are present in the text. Maybe the spelling of a word, maybe the meaning of certain words, maybe the grammatical features that is found in a story, for example. Yeah. But the general principle is meaning first. Yeah, let the students understand the meaning, but form is important too. So, a small amount of time is dedicated to drawing students' attention to the language features. So that's how it happens in Singapore.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Any other questions for Dr. Willie? He's very knowledgeable on other issues too, related to language teaching and learning. While they're thinking of a question, if they have one, I just want to share with you that me and some of my students were at the COTISO conference just this weekend. Actually, I only attended the first day.
Yeah.
And there was something really interesting that I sort of heard. I just attended one session. I didn't have time to go to other sessions. And in that session, the native speaking teacher was talking about, because COTISO is usually native speakers.
Yes, expatriate teachers, yeah.
Yeah, so native speaking teacher was talking about how he was disempowered by native speakerism, which we never really thought about. So he said that he teaches in Japan, and he's been teaching there for 3 or 4 years, but he was asked to pretend that he just arrived in Japan. It's a local language, but he was asked to pretend that he didn't know the local language, and he couldn't use it even though he is able to speak it. So that was an interesting sort of, and I think he's from Britain or Australia, I'm not sure, but he was sort of asked to play this specific role of an American who just got to this foreign country and doesn't speak a local language. I just thought it was
interesting.
Yeah. I mean,
yes, yeah. I think one of the reasons for that is that the school or the institution where he teaches or where he taught, had this idea that, they want their students to listen to English language,
spoken by a native speaker. So that is
by the
exactly
native speaker.
yeah. So
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought that was wow. Okay.
Yeah. In some situations, it makes sense because the students very often have very little or no opportunity listening to language being spoken by native speakers or by non-native speakers of the language. So the amount of language input actually in our students is very small. So in the past, universities, institutions will insist that the teachers use English only in the classroom. Yeah. So I think that's one of the reasons. Hari. Yeah, thanks. Yes, Unsung. Yeah, I wanted to go to Cortisol again this year. So I asked one of my friends to put my name up, for possible invitation, but he said, no, because you came, you did a presentation last year, so this year, no.
Oh, we had a small turnout this year. Relatively, because you were not
there. Yes, Ari, please go ahead.
I had a similar but different experience at Cotizo. Thing is, now that I was there, I was very ashamed of like my accent. And the first person I talked to, she literally went, "Oh, you're Spanish, right? You have like a Spanish accent." And I was like, "Okay, it's so obvious." And I asked her, "So where are you from?" Because I couldn't like pick up her accent. And she was like, "Oh, I am British, but because I came to Korea and people expected like an American accent, I had to tone it down." So now I lost my British accent just because I need to speak American in here. And she was like, and as I am Black, people do not really know if I'm British or American or whatever. And I was like, oh, that is so interesting. And then we had like the opposite experience. That was a girl from South Africa. And she was like, oh, I didn't adapt to my students, but little by little, I made them adapt to me, to my accent instead of like faking an American accent. So they were like different experiences. It was fun to see.
Communication is always two ways, isn't it? It's a two-way thing. So if I don't understand somebody talking to me, I will ask the person to speak in a way that I can understand. In the same way, if I speak in a way that people don't understand, I think I'm very happy to adjust. So it's a two-way thing. It's not like, okay, this is how I speak, take it or leave it. I don't think that should be the way to go. Yeah.
Okay. If there are no more questions, we want to thank Dr. Willie. I think he sort of I think he gave us an important message that all the assumptions and beliefs that we thought were, true, tried and true, we strongly believed in. I think once in a while we need to question those and sort of revise our assumptions, based on current needs. And trends. So thank you so much for your talk, Dr. Willie.
Thank you. Thank you, Unsung.
Thank you so much. And and thanks to all your students also for joining us for this class. And I hope we can do more collaborative sort of talk like this at some point.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so so my students, maybe you can remain on wait, can I take a group picture? Can you all make some cute faces? So I do 1, 2, 3, and then I take a picture. Okay, everybody look into the camera. 1, 2, 3. Do you want to do some gesture? I can't because I have to use my fingers to type. So a V sign, victory sign, that would be nice. 1, 2,
3.
3. Okay, thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
My students stay online. Okay, I have some things to sort of say. So
Singapore students, please leave the room.
Good seeing you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Unsung. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.
All right. Mio-ji Lai, are you in my class? You can log out. Yeah, thank you. Okay, who's left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so how was it? Yeah. Okay.
Sounds good.
Great.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay. Was it a repeat from last time? I don't remember. I don't think so. Yeah, it's a different article. So yeah. So
Yes, it was a difference.
yeah, it was a different article, right? Yeah. And it was understandable, right? Kind of,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, good. So for those of you in my SLA research, just work on your proposal and instruments, and then I will talk with you individually on May 8th or something like that, right? Yeah. Okay, so you can do that. Those of you in my 학석사 연계 과목, next week we have, it's a holiday. Next Monday is a red letter day, holiday, Children's Day holiday. So we don't have class, but because, you know, we're missing too many classes, I think. So I am going to upload a lecture, and it's a very easy one. Me and Dr. Willie are talking, okay? And it's a lecture about 10 successful habits of language learner, 10 habits of successful language learner or something like that. So read it and post your reading log. That's all I'm asking you to do. Listen to it and post your reading log. That's all I'm asking you to do, okay? Okay, so everybody looks tired. Zoom meeting is actually it's more tiring than, you know, in-person class, I think, yeah? All right, so any questions on what you need to do?
Christine, can you upload the answers to the language aptitude test?
I will do that, Zach. Okay, I will. Yeah, so I'm very forgetful these days. I'm so sorry. And I will do that right away, today, okay? If I don't, just send me, just write it on the cyber campus, but I'll do it right now. All right, thank you, and I'll see you next week. Oh, I'll see you a week after next, I think, okay? Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Professor.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much.
If you need to talk to me, you can stay online, yeah.